What's going on, everyone? Going to History, coming to you today again with another podcast style video. I've done a few of these in the past, especially the ones dealing with movie reviews, and some people have given some pretty positive reactions, some neutral reactions, a few negative reactions. So I wanted to reach out again and conduct one of these videos. So this time we're talking about Hocus Pocus 2 and the initial reactions to the film. I'm a little behind the schedule. Unfortunately, I was planning on watching it a week ago when the movie premiered, but unfortunately life happens, like with many people. We have great intentions to accomplish a lot of tasks we have at hand, but the actual execution of these tasks don't always come to fruition like we would like for them to do. One of which being watching Hocus Pocus 2. For those who've been paying attention to my channel for a long period of time, you may or may not know that my favorite movie of all time is the original Hocus Pocus from 1993. It's coming up next year, next July. It's coming up with its 30th anniversary, which is crazy to think that it's been 30 years since the original Hocus Pocus came out, but the time is upon us. And many people may or may not know a little trivia that the original Hocus Pocus came out in July of 1993 instead of October. The reason why it didn't come out in October is because another Disney film was coming out at the same time period in October, which was The Nightmare Before Christmas, and they didn't want the Hocus Pocus to interfere with the productions and the box office sales of The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's kind of crazy to think. The fact of the matter is that Nightmare Before Christmas was viewed as being the bigger of the two box office blockbusters. They believe that that Hocus Pocus wasn't necessarily going to be a hit necessarily. It's crazy to think, hindsight now about to be 30 years in the future, the cult classic, the cult following that follows behind the movie Hocus Pocus. There also is one of The Nightmare Before Christmas as well. But that was pretty much expected. Even Disney expected it to happen. That's why they made sure that Nightmare Before Christmas was premiered and was happening in October, whereas Hocus Pocus happened in July of 1993. But if you didn't know, now you do, that Hocus Pocus is my favorite movie of all time. A close second would be George A. Romero's original production of Dawn of the Dead. Something about the one in the mall just really, I just really enjoy. The remake was okay in 2003, but it was not the original by any means. That's definitely a close second. As you can see, there's definitely a genre connected to these types of films. Number 3, probably a toss-up between John Carpenter's Halloween and probably the original Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney, the silent film. Totally different genres, totally different purposes in the sense that they're both Halloween-ish type, more horror type films, definitely, but definitely different time periods, different formats. But anyway, this video today is on Hocus Pocus 2. And I don't want to give away too much information. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I made it a point that when I watched the film for the first time, that I did not read anything. I did not go in and read the plot of the film, didn't look through the summary of the film, didn't look for any hints as to what the film was going to be about prior to its production, prior to its release. I wanted to be completely surprised. I heard some stories. There was a book publication that had a Hocus Pocus 2 in it. I actually own a copy of it, haven't read it yet, like many things. One of the things for many of the fellow historians, paranormal investigators, avid readers, pretty much almost any person, it's very easy to collect items than it is to actually utilize the items that we collect. Books are definitely one of those items. It's very easy to acquire large amounts of books that never get read. Hocus Pocus book is one of those that I have not read yet, and I've had it for like a year or two. I don't remember exactly how long I've had it for. But I do own the book. I've heard different stories about the plot line was of that book, and there could be some varying degrees of similarities between that book and what ultimately became Hocus Pocus 2. I need to read the book to find out, but I had a little bit of ideas of some things. One of the things we do get from the book for the new movie is that there is now a new set of characters. A few people reprise their roles. You have the Sanderson sisters are the same. You have Bette Midler returning as Winifred Sanderson. You have Sarah Jessica Parker returning as Sarah Sanderson. And you have Catherine Najimy returning and reprising her role as Mary Sanderson. So we have the three Sanderson sisters back. We also have Doug Jones reprising his role as Billy Butcherson, who was believed to be Winifred's lover, but apparently in this movie we ended up finding out that wasn't necessarily the case. He was poisoned, he had his mouth sewn shut for frolicking and hanging out with Winifred's sister, Sarah. But, as we're going to find out in the film, necessarily, maybe he wasn't fancying Winifred all that much. I'm not going to give away any information, any clues to that, but, definitely look out for that in the film if you haven't watched it yet. But everyone else is new. We have three new main characters. There's been a lot of different questions. There's a lot of speculations. There's a lot of criticisms as to why many of the original characters did not reprise their role. A lot of people could have came back. We had Ernie coming back as Ice. We could have had Max reprising his role. We could have had Allison. We could have had Danny. All these different main characters from the film could have came back and reprised their roles. Actually ended up finding out, apparently, the gentleman who played Max actually really wanted to reprise his role. He really wanted to reprise it, but they said no. They want to take a different direction. It's not the first time that we've seen Disney do this before, and it's been at the total criticisms of many of the viewers. We saw this with Halloween Town, whereas we had Kimberly J. Brown played the role of Marnie in the three first films, 1, 2, and 3. And then when they came out with the Halloween Town 4, when she goes off to college, they replace her with somebody else, even though she wanted to be in that film. They said, sorry, we want to take a different direction. And I believe that's ultimately what ended up killing the series, was the fact of changing out who the main character was. And then they turned around and did the exact same thing again with Hocus Pocus 2. Looking online, they said it was the number one watched premiere on Disney Plus, which could be a really good thing or a really bad thing. I'm not really sure, because I haven't kept up with all the data and all the logistics that come along with Disney Plus, but I'm not sure how many films have actually been premiered solely on Disney Plus. Maybe one of you might know that. Can you please put down in the comments below, letting me know what other films have really been premiered on Disney Plus, so who the challengers are that Hocus Pocus is up against. But I digress on that. They could have easily, brought back these characters, could have had a role. There's so much that could have done with it. And seeing some of the reviews, even though it was the most watched premiere on Disney Plus, the percentage of satisfaction is about 71%. So about 71% of the viewers were fairly satisfied with the film. It carries currently a 61% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and about 6.1 out of 10 stars on the average rating scale. I'm not really sure if I'm not generous. If I had to give it a score between a 0 and a 10, I'm thinking probably a 5.5. 5.5 out of 10 is what I'm thinking, for a couple of different reasons. I did like the fact that, that they definitely did take a new story. They added some backstory to the witches. How did their powers come to be? However, there's definitely some plot holes that I don't want to go into too much details, because I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't watched it yet. But there's definitely some plot holes in the film. There was some statements made in the original one about relations to her parents, to their parents, the Sanderson sisters' parents, and it didn't necessarily line up. The sequel acts as if the powers came later and came from an indirect source other than directly. However, the original one made it seem as if their mother had powers. So there was some confusions there. I could have maybe missed something in the sequel that maybe one of you listeners may follow in and just comment letting me know what I missed. And I'll go back and look at it again. But that's something I missed. There was some sequences and some things that just didn't add up. There's also the foundation of the second film in relations to what value systems are in place. It kind of goes against the entire framework of the original one. There was slight instances where some of the original central plot came through from the original film, but there's a lot of instances where they kind of try to revamp it. And I understand, things have changed a lot in the last 30 years in relations to what worked in 1992, 1993, and what works today in 2022. I get that. I understand that. But I don't necessarily agree with it, if that makes sense. You have three new characters. You have Izzy, you have Becca, and you have Cassie. Three really good friends who find themselves caught in the middle of the return of the Sanderson sisters. You have a gentleman by the name of Gilbert, who apparently was a young child at the time period where it happened. Speaking back to that, when they do back to try to provide the backstory, I have some questions about the age. The very first film, before they take the lives of Emily Binks, I have no problems talking about the original film. I think in 30 years, if you haven't watched it yet, then I'm sorry. You should have watched it. When they take the lives of Emily Binks and turn Zachary Binks into a cat, in 1693, they were extremely elderly, very old witches. However, in the sequel, they're putting the age of when they gain their powers, putting them in a adolescent, early teenage phase, and the years just don't really add up. They would put, at the time of Emily Binks' demise, they would put the Sanderson sisters probably in their late 50s, maybe early 60s, which, could potentially be something. But if they're witches and they're elderly, they definitely looked like they were a lot older than 60s. So, maybe something had to do with that. The timing just seemed really off to me, based off of the age. We're looking at in the late 50s, early 60s. And it seemed like the dates needed to be a little bit earlier in time. And that could just be the historian in me. That's something I just can't overlook. Some people can overlook it. Some people can enjoy things. It's like, I know it's like when I watch the movie The Patriot, for example, when they have the American Revolution happening, there's some scenes that happen in South Carolina where there's a battle, they hide in the brush. The problem is that those types of crops didn't exist in South Carolina until about 10 years after the war. The average person would have no idea that it even existed, but me being the historian, I did, and it is frustrating. It's annoying to me. I wish I could overlook it, but I can't. It could just be me taking and really stretching things out. It could be really, just challenging things a little bit, but yeah, I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10. Did I dislike it? No. Did I enjoy every moment of it? No. There definitely was some nice backstory. There definitely was some nice instances. Do I think it competes with the original story? No. That's definitely something that's really hard to do. A lot of times when we come across films, sometimes people say the ability for a sequel to outdo its original is very hard. Let's take Halloween, for example. I mentioned at the beginning. Halloween is a John Carpenter's Halloween is a very, very, very good film. The second one is also equally as good. In some cases, people make the argument it's actually better because it provides more of a demise, more of a story, more of a mystique to it. The kills are a little bit more extreme. The mask is definitely different. In the 3-year time period between 1 and 2 being produced, I guess I couldn't find the mask, so they decided to evolve or to adapt or to change the mask. I'm not really sure why. I don't necessarily get that, why we have all the different Halloween films and we have like 12 different masks that exist in all the different films. But it is what it is. But yes, I will give it a little bit more time, then a little bit more depth into the into the film. In a few more weeks, I'll publish something, upload a video that dives into the film more in depth into the plot line. Because once you get about a month out from the productions, hopefully everyone who's going to watch the film has watched the film and would not have any spoilers happening by watching the film. But yeah, so this is my initial reaction. Something I haven't really done much on this channel before, which is film reviews. I did a podcast style video about a week ago leading up to Halloween Ends, which is supposed to come out in, I believe, 2 days from now. We are 2 days out from potentially the last time seeing Laurie Strode and Michael Myers in the same scene again. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel. Share this video with other people, people who may like Hocus Pocus or like movie reviews or just like seeking out the golden ticket to history. As always, continue to look for the history in film. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Look forward to some of the new videos we have coming out. I just uploaded a video on Forrest Gump from a filming location I did back in July. It's not everything that I wanted. I made the biggest mistake of trying to tackle Washington, D.C. on foot. Not a good idea. Trying to tackle multiple locations in a very short amount of time, not a good idea. A lot of things did not happen that I wanted to happen while I was there, so it means I need to go back again and accomplish those tasks left unfinished. But anyhow, hopefully you have a good day. Let me know down in the comments below if you liked this video, if you'd like to see more review type videos, or if you'd like to see something else in the future. Have a good one, everyone.